we know that there is a problem, and we asked ourselves, what is it that we should do about it? How do we address it? Now, the response usually comes our way to blame the discipline. On how many occasions have this notion that the discipline of IR excludes, marginalizes, filters out, right? My submission to you is that the discipline is an outcome. It is not an actor. The discipline, IR, is an outcome. It is not an actor. IR cannot do anything. IR is a function of the work that we do, scholars do. And so what we need to focus on is aspects that prevent IR from possessing and reflecting a universal orientation. That's our job, right? How do we get IR to possess and reflect the universality that we talked about, which is a part of its ontology, part of its theoretical infrastructure. One way to do that, of course, is to create new knowledge, right? Create new concepts, theories, questions, methods, etc. And we can do this by seeing what work has already been done and how we can build upon it. Divyaraj is where? Yeah, Divyaraj just asked a question, if you don't mind my telling everyone, right? I want to develop a theory. I also want to develop a theory, right? But in order to develop a theory, in order to come up with a concept, in order to come up with interesting questions that are new, for all of this, we need to do basic legwork, and that involves asking ourselves, what is the ground that has already been covered? In this session, over the next 45 minutes, I will walk you through with examples and visual examples. You will sometimes have to read very small words, small letters, examples of the work that has already been done. And here's the interesting part. Each example that I will give you will do two things for you. One, it will reflect at least one of the elements of IR that we covered initially. Each example will. And secondly, each example will show that the questions about Eurocentrism, post-coloniality, white maleness, etc., those questions have already been addressed. And third, each example that I will give you will be from India. Fourth, each example that I will show you, most examples that I will show you, will not be from JNU. They will not also be from Delhi. And all examples would be of international relations. Okay? My point is to just give you a flavor of the work that people have already done, and I will go back to over 100 years. I'll start with 1920. The reason I will do that is to just give you a flavor of the work that has already been done. More importantly, give you a sense of for how long we have been thinking about the same set of questions that we are concerned with today. That does not mean the questions are not important. What it means is there's so much work that they are so important that we've been thinking about them for over 100 years. And when we know what work has already happened, we can learn from what has worked and what has not worked, right? We're good so far? Okay. How many of you are ready to sleep now in the next 2 minutes after all the heavy lunch? Okay, good. Just stay with me. Examples coming your way. Madras, 1952. There used to be a journal called the Indian Yearbook of International Affairs. There is a conventional story of IR that is told in India. IR, first institution of IR, research institution? ICWA. First school of international studies? SIS starts, it's an offshoot of ICWA and so on and so forth, right? And all the IR that happened in JNU therefore, or between ICWA and, not true. Just look at this. 1952, Madras, Indian Yearbook of International Affairs. I don't know if you can read it, but I will read it out for you. At the end of 1951, a team of scholars formed a study group of international affairs at the University of Madras, 1952. Its purpose is to coordinate research in 3 subjects: international law, international relations, and international economics. Look at this. Are we thinking about international affairs in such an integrated fashion today? Just placing it before you. Who's the editor of this yearbook? Who starts it? Charles Henry Alexandrovich. Does anyone know who Charles Henry Alexandrovich is? We'll come back to him in a bit. Very interesting story. Okay. Now look at the table of contents. The first piece, India and the Balance of Power, written by G.S. Bajpai. Who was G.S. Bajpai? Grandfather. Yeah, but he was also the first and the last Secretary General of the Ministry of External Affairs. ICS moved into this and so on and so forth. Here's a paper on, and he starts by referring to Thucydides. We don't have a realist tradition. Example. And you just go through the list of the content and the kind of material that is featuring there. Almost every single question that we are concerned with today, the authors there are concerned with as well. First example, remember, Madras, 1952. Second example, Hyderabad, 1975. Osmania University, Professor H.K. Sherwani. There is in 1975, Government of Andhra Pradesh publishes a felicitation volume for Professor Sherwani. Yeah, and this volume is on studies in foreign relations of India. Remember, studies in foreign relations of India. In Hyderabad, not in Delhi, not in JNU. Who's publishing it? Government of Andhra Pradesh. Look at this here. Professor H.K. Sherwani was the head of the Department of History and Politics when I entered. This is the Nawab Yawar Ali Jung, University of Osmania in 1927, etc. Ask yourself, a felicitation volume on foreign relations of India for a professor of history and politics. Make what you want to of it. I am just giving you examples of this, but I want to draw your attention to the table of contents there. They're very small, and I'll have to use my glasses as well. But if you paid attention to them, there are all kinds of very interesting things going on. There's India and world historical context, etc. But the second paper here, India's relations with countries in Asia, political and cultural, from some BC to 1300 AD, is by Professor R.C. Majumdar. Historians have contributed to questions of historical foreign policy questions in a volume like this. But there's something else, questions that we don't talk about. One of these chapters is on foreign influences on the architecture of the Taj Mahal. How does discipline develop? Disciplines develop by virtue of publications, by virtue of scholars coming together. So imagine a situation in which you have a book in which is called Foreign Studies in Foreign Relations of India, in which you have somebody writing a chapter on the foreign influences on the architecture of Taj Mahal. How creative. and entirely IR. Why? What is this, if you like, Indo-Muslim aesthetics? I do not know what the exact term is, but if you want to sort of call it Indo-Muslim aesthetic, it's a aesthetic that is born of the encounter of two cultural complexes, right? And that interaction has produced a distinct aesthetic style. Aesthetics are produced by international relations, right? And you have an example of this here. I don't know if anyone has seen Mahmud Ghazni's coins, mint on one side, it's Shahadas published on it. On one side, it's in Sharda script, Sanskrit, and on the other side, it is in Arabic. The same idea that there is no God but Allah. On in Sanskrit, the same thing is written on the same coin, Ekam Sat, something something and something something. One coin. On one side, the same idea is expressed in Sanskrit in Sharda script, Mahmud Ghazni's coin. On the other side, the same is written in Arabic. What's going on? What is going on? International relations. Yeah, it's shaping our everyday. My point, just to sort of grasp, just to, when we are training ourselves to be serious international relations scholar, we need to feel, see the international all around us. Just look at this attire. What do you have? What am I wearing right now? The top attire, shortened kurta, modernized, yeah. And what am I wearing? Niche, trousers. It's a combination, Indo-Western, if you like, modernized to current aesthetics, and pretentiously sold by Fab India. Fab India combination. I'm giving you small examples, but the point is precisely the same. International affairs are happening all around us at all points. There's a little bit of China in everyone's life, including on the screens that you are sort of. Anyway, so that's the second example, serious example. Let's take a look at the third one. Calcutta, 1982. Professor Jayantanuja Bandyopadhyay, IFS, becomes Professor of International Relations at Jadavpur University. 1982. What is the name of the book? North versus South. North over South, sorry. A non-Western perspective of international relations. My only request, and I say this to my students as well, PhD students, they come to me and say, you know, I want to work on non-Western international relations. Have you read Professor Bandyopadhyay? Simple question. And here's why. Look at the content here. Imperialism and international relations, racism and international relations, disarmament, development, world order, strategy for new international economic order, national character, structure of international order, non-alignment, climate. 1982. How many of these concerns are contemporary, you think? All of them. All of them, right? Just placing it before you for your consideration. Professor Bandyopadhyay, by the way, in 1993 also wrote, not surprisingly, a general theory of international relations. Are we aware of it? People have done that work. Good or bad, I don't know. But the work has already, people have attempted work. And it's good to sort of see what people have done, so that we can ask ourselves whether, you know, why reinvent the wheel when work is already done. Let's see what's there. Fourth example, Baroda, 1976. Professor A.P. Rana describes his own work as the first proto-theory of Indian non-alignment. Not Delhi, Baroda. It's a giant. Professor Beg will tell you, previous generation people will tell you, absolute giant of the field. Didn't work out of Delhi. And he gave Professor Kanti Bajpai his first job in Baroda. Look at the first part, capability analysis. The second part is where culture is featuring so centrally into into his analytical framework for India's non-alignment. And there's a fantastic chapter there, the perspective of political culture, India's political culture towards the derivation of some basic orientations. 45 pages of extraordinary mining of India's intellectual history to distill the concept of anarchy as it obtains in Indian political thinking. It's there. Next one, 1974, Delhi, not JNU. You're familiar with the name, right? Rajni Kothari? My generation, earlier people would know. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. Okay, Rajni Kothari, do you associate him with IR or with political science mostly? Political science, right? Political science kind of stuff. Which is to say, IR in the sense, do you think that he was writing on foreign policy and so on and so forth? Not really. He has a book. It's a fantastic work. There used to be in the 1970s something called the World Orders Models Project. And the idea was that the Cold War had locked people's imagination and everyone was stuck. We needed alternatives for international order. So you had a whole range of new people who came up with international ideas about what an alternative international order could look like. Other pieces, other contributions in this were by Professor Ali Mazrui, the giant of African international relations. There was Richard Fogg, there was Johann Galtung, and there was Rajni Kothari. CSDS, not JNU, not IR. Okay. Now look at the dedication there. The value of autonomy and struggle to achieve it under conditions that violated for large part of human race and are central themes in this book. It also offers a perspective on building a viable structure of interdependence, things that came up in our discussion this morning. In the world and as a means to that end, strategies for regional cooperation and pooling of efforts and resources at various levels. Jawaharlal Nehru, it's dedicated to Nehru and to Julius Nyerere. Something else, just look at this. The publication of this volume is a result of collaboration of 4 publishing houses. The Free Press, New York; Ghana Publishing Corporation, Accra; North Holland Publishing Company, Amsterdam; Orient Longman, India. Collaboration. Yeah. New Delhi, 1973, related to JNU, but interesting because of that. Now here's a, oh. Can somebody read that for us? Read it out loud. Somebody volunteers to read it for us. Yes. Leave that aside. With the
disintegration of the Mughal Empire consequent upon the death of Emperor Aurangzeb in 1707 AD, position changed in as much as there was no central authority at Delhi, but there were several large and small sovereign states conducting interstate intercourse and adhering to some recognized legal regulation.
okay. What is the picture that is emerging in that little excerpt? Organized international domain, sovereign state, etc. Yeah. Now, what have I written here? International law decolonizes 18th century South Asia. Does any student of modern history here, or somebody who takes interest in modern history, 18th century South Asian history? Okay, what happened in 1707? Of course, what happened? We know what happened, right? What happened in 1707? Death of Aurangzeb. What is the narrative about what followed in Hindustan after the death of Aurangzeb? Decline of Mughals. What else? There is a concept of, and the British gave that concept to us, it's called the Great Anarchy. And their argument was that after the collapse, after the death of Emperor Aurangzeb, there ensued a century of anarchy. And the British had to turn from a trading interest into an empire building machine in order to tame this anarchy. Remember what I am talking about? Anarchy. And the idea that it was anarchy that they had tamed, the great anarchy that they had tamed, was the ideology on which the British ruled. Remember, it's so central, it has not been studied. Hint, hint, something to work on. The great anarchy. Okay? You recall in 1940s when this is in the context of the Quit India movement, what did Gandhi say to the British? Quit India, Bharat Chodo, but he also said something else. Do or die, okay. He said, leave India to God, or what were the two things he said? You leave India, you go, and you can leave India to God, or anyone? Anarchy. He said, leave India to God or anarchy. The anarchy that he was saying, you go, you leave India to that anarchy, was the anarchy that the British were saying. Hum chale jayenge, anarchy aa jayegi. He said, no, go. You don't bother, we'll manage it. Okay. Jawaharlal Nehru, Discovery of India, spends about 13-14 pages discussing 18th century South Asia. Nagendra Singh was a justice of the International Court of Justice, a judge on the International Court of Justice. First Indian, yeah. Nehru Sahab asked him to come and do IR scholarship. He is decolonizing 18th century South Asia. What is decolonization? The colonial narratives about us needs to be countered. And there was nothing more fictitious. Actually, I don't know, there was a fair bit of chaos. But where the British said there was nothing, there was only ruin and fire, Nagendra Singh says that there is a full-fledged civilized international domain there, where you have several large and small states conducting interstate intercourse adhering to some recognized legal regulation. In 1883 or 1888, Professor John Robert Seeley wrote a book called Expansion of England, in which he had an entire section. It's called Expansion of England into India. It's called How We Conquered India, where he says India is I mean, you remember this thing that the British conquered India in a fit of absent-mindedness? One of the things he says that India was politically dead. There was no India in the 18th century. Look at what he's saying. Not only was there no India, there was a full-fledged international domain here. You had sovereign states that were carrying out interstate intercourse. There is no better example, no stronger example of decolonization that I have seen coming out, and not today, 1973. Just placing it before you. You recall Madras 1952, Charles Henry Alexandrovich, Polish scholar, spent 10 years in India, in Madras, launched the Indian Yearbook on International Affairs. This is what Professor Chimney has to say about him. Charles Henry Alexandrovich, preface, was a scholar who was among the first to conceptualize, mark my words, sorry, listen to what I'm saying here, history of international law as that of intersecting histories of different regions of the world. Alexandrovich was aware that while the idea of writing a global history of law of nations is liberating, there is no guarantee that it will not become the handmaiden of contemporary and future imperial projects. What were needed was critical global histories that provincialize established Eurocentric historiographies and read them alongside other regional histories. Professor Alexandrovich's work pushing back against the notion that international law was of European origin was done in India, in Madras, between 1951 and 1961. And there are two things that I want to draw your attention to. This is one. International law is considered the product of events and dealings between sovereign states which took place in Christian community in Europe, right? Standard Eurocentric thing. Historians of international law have until recently concentrated on the influence of Europe, etc. There is, however, and this is where IR training comes in, no reason to believe that similar institutions were not evolved in similar circumstances in other parts of the world. Ahmed, what are we referring to here? Starts with U, ends with Y. Not university, but universality. If the circumstances were there, you would have similar institutions present there. The Indian subcontinent, with its rich variety of political organizations, is an open and inviting field of research for the historian of international law and relations. When is this? Early 1950s. And what is it a pushback against? Eurocentrism. A few more. Nagendra Singh says 18th century Hindustan, international domain. Look at what he says, Alexandrovich. And this is from this, this chapter here, Mughal sovereignty and the law of nations. He says that had it also proved possible to achieve a balance of power between the emancipated rulers of India under, for example, Maratha leadership, India could have witnessed the establishment of its own concert of powers and its own public law in the same way as Europe. Conditions were there, but the Mughals collapsed sooner than they should have collapsed. Okay? More importantly, he says, the collapse of the Mughal empire made the position of China highly vulnerable and ultimately resulted in the breakdown of, I've omitted it out, Asian international relations. Look at the way he's thinking about it. If the Mughals had held, if the transition from the Mughals to Marathas had happened without a major chaos, the international dynamics of Asia would have been very different. 1950s. Serious geopolitical thinking at the intersection of international law and international relations. Benjamin, you're with me here? (1920) Calcutta. International law scholarship pushes against Eurocentrism. Nor could we, in the face of modern researches, attribute the rules of international law solely to modern European ingenuity, to modern European thought, to modern European culture, and to the powerful writings of European jurists like Grotius, Rachel, Ayala, Pufendorf, Vettel, and so on and so forth. From what has been said above, it would appear that rules of international law are not exclusively of European origin. 1920, Calcutta. Pramatnath Bandyopadhyay. Calcutta University Press. Trichy. Anyone from Kerala here? Trichy, Trichinopoly. No, that's not Kerala, that's Tamil Nadu, no? Tamil Nadu, yeah, sorry. Okay, 1925. World War I inspires a methodologically sensitive scholarship on international law in early India. Just look at the motivation. The subject of the following book was suggested to me by the Great War of 1914, which witnessed rather sweeping changes in the European law of nations. Look at the scholars thinking. That war has happened. It has had consequences. It has shaken the foundations of international law. Let's see what is found in my part of the world. And then look at what he says. With this record of cruelty among civilized nations of modern times, let us try to discover the rules of conduct that guided the states in ancient India in millenniums gone by. The subject is one beset with obvious difficulties. We should be on our guard against projecting modern ideas of political philosophy into a far off age in the history of this vast continent, where there was admittedly a great variety of local customs and usages. Absolutely clear about methodological issues involved in presentist understandings of past. And the final element, globality. Out of Trichy, published by Longmans, Green and Company, Bombay, which has offices in Calcutta and Madras, but also in London, New York and Toronto. Global scholarship. Pushing back against Eurocentrism, international law in 1925, not from Delhi. And my final example, it's extraordinary example, Lanka Sundaram. Have you come across the name before? No? Lanka Sundaram, the first Indian to publish a journal article in a journal that is today called International Affairs. It's a top 10 journal, and that in 1930 was called Journal of Royal Institute of International Affairs. It's called the International Status of India. Lanka Sundaram, Vijayawada, back then Bezwada, establishes something called Indian Institute of International Affairs, IIIA. And my friend Vineet has done some research on it. He establishes Indian Institute of International Affairs in Bezwada in the 1930s, and he writes to Royal Institute of International Affairs and says that, let there be an affiliation between you and us, etc. Doesn't go anywhere. But what I'm saying is, you have an Indian scholar operating not out of Delhi, publishing in the top ranked imperial journal of the time. Very hard to get in. But there's something else. Alfred Zimmern, Charles A. Manning, these are canonical names in English School of International Affairs. Dr. Lanka Sundaram has a volume co-authored with them on India's international relations. And here's a backstory to it. That volume emerges from something called the Oxford University Gandhi Group. Gandhi is still very much, he's not Mahatma, he's Mahatma, but he's still an active politician at this moment. The Oxford University Gandhi Group, it's coming from there. Just look at the number of interlinkages there. He also, where is it? Yeah. He also in the 1940s, 44, writes a book called India and World Politics, where he's basically synthesized all of his thinking about India in the through the 1930s and early 1940s. Those were my examples. Concluding reflections, therefore. These are just, so now I'm going to say provocative things. You don't have to believe me. These are personal positions. But I'm just going to push them before you. I believe that the West, non-West binary is untenable. Stanley Hoffman is famous for saying that, questioning the notion, or at least sort of suggesting that IR is a Western social science. My reading of evidence about Indian international relations scholarship, of which I have only given you a scattered evidence. It's all coming out into a paper, which is why IR is not a Western or an American social science. This is how I put it. It is a social science born of intellectual responses to modern international problems. And Indians have played a major role in shaping it, collaboratively, critically, creatively. I repeat those words: collaboratively, critically, creatively. not an American social science, not an Indian social science. It's not a good idea to think of IR as Indian IR, Pakistani IR, Western IR, American IR. IR is IR. It's a modern social science to which intellectuals, wherever they can contribute, are contributing because they are seized of international challenges of their times. All the examples that I've given you are all examples of academic scholarship. They're all first-rate scholarship going back 105 years. And they are concerned with exactly the questions that we are concerned with today. Second, so to me, this West, non-West binary when it comes to knowledge, at least IR is concerned, it's untenable. IR is IR, it's a modern social science in which contributions have come from everywhere, is how I think about it. Second, context matters. If we practice our discipline according to its fundamentals while being aware of our context, we will address the most substantive questions of our times. Context matters a great deal. Where are we located? What is our identity? What are our interests? If we are aware of all of those, we'll invariably start asking very good questions and most important questions. Hello people over there, sorry I wasn't looking at all of you. You can hear me at the back, right? Excellent, thank you. They're my comrades, they're like real comrades. Okay, third, the myth of Delhi centricity. There is this huge myth that IR developed at SIS. Fantastic work has been done consistently away from SIS, away from Delhi. Fantastic work. I've just given you examples of this and many, many more. Right.
Asked for contribution for all it was there. And I have seen some of the articles by the throwing of international questions.
I completely agree. It's quite possible that that is there. I haven't looked at that material, but I'm very sure that that is the case. You can just add Aligarh to it. Calcutta, Vijayawada, Trichinopoly, Baroda, Hyderabad, Madras, Aligarh, potentially Allahabad as well, because there was a lot of publication going on there as well. So all of these places. IR is not Delhi centric also. Globally engaged, fully aware, fully participatory. People here are responding to the war and saying, oh, the war has happened, it is my problem. Today, very often, you know, that war is going on, that's their problem. Hamara problem global south ka hai. Why this sectarianism? Even if it is, you know, third world sectarianism, why sectarianism? Sorry, I said that I will say things that are provocative, only to make you think. You don't have to agree with me. But why this sectarianism? Problem is a problem. We have the intellectual resources. There's a major problem that is happening anywhere. It's a global problem, right? That's a Western problem. That's a non-Western problem. Why? Globally engaged in terms of issues that they analyzed, in terms of collaborations that they forged, in terms of histories that they examined. Critical, but also creative. And it's one of the things that I tell my students very often, that a good scholar is not just Divyaraj. Not okay. A good scholar is not only critical, they are also creative. And can you think of the best example of creativity from all of the examples that we covered so far? Which one do you think was the most creative forms of scholarship? Right? And across arts, aesthetics, and that's the one, right? Extraordinarily creative. Be creative. So they're creative, they are critical, combining both those elements. Emancipatory universalism. What prevents me from the point that Professor Beg said in the morning? By all means respond to the dominant injustices. but make a statement that will replace, that will be acceptable to others beyond your identity, beyond your culture, beyond your region, etc. Footsteps into the Future is a blueprint for how to organize another international order for anyone from any part of the world. Final slide, therefore. My request, not my request, my 2 pence on this is, think our task fundamentally is to practice our discipline in a robust fashion, as strongly, as frankly, and with as much honesty and transparency as we can. And there are two things that are important to it. One is a firm grasp of the fundamentals of the discipline, very clear about what the discipline's fundamentals are, and awareness of the history of the discipline in your part of the world. Before we sort of say, I want to work on this, etc., let's see what work has already been done. And there's a lot of work that has happened. Thank you for your patience. Happy to take your questions now.
Hello, sir. So my question is, how to put and study deep state's role in international relations, sir?
To
Put
deep state.
in shaping international relations.
Deep state. It's not a category that I work with. Gosh, well, I'll just take this off. It's not a, deep state is not a concept. It's not a concept that I work with because I don't think it is amenable to social science analysis. How do I, what are the boundaries of the deep state? Is it the intelligence apparatus? Is it the elite capitalists? Is it the military industrial complex? Unless I know what the boundaries of a particular actor is, I don't know how to analyze and how to study. So it's a factor, it's not something that I will ever use in my analysis. It's a limitation, it could be, but I'd rather be limited in what I say than be unsure of what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying? So it's a category that I will not work with, deep state. I would work with, for example, the role of intelligence agencies in shaping international relations, or of military, industrial organizations in shaping international relations. But this complex of the deep state, it's not an analytical category for me. Okay. Yeah. What's your name? Sakshi.
You don't see international relations as Eurocentric, but we don't recognize major scholars in India which are related to international relations. And plus, we are studying theories which are developed by Western thinkers like realism, liberalism. All major theories are related to West. So
How do I?
how do I respond to that?
Yeah, yeah, I will respond to it. No, no, it's fine. Um, Recall that I didn't say that there is no Eurocentrism. What I'm saying is that Eurocentrism has been responded to and has been pushed back against for a very long time. What I have said is that the West non-West binary is untenable. It does not stand the test of scrutiny because to me, IR is a modern social science that has emerged because intellectuals have responded in a systematic fashion scholars have responded in a systematic fashion to the biggest international challenges of their times. So to me, it is neither Indian nor American nor Western, etc. That's one part. Is there Eurocentrism? Yes. How does it reflect? In precisely the things that you said. Yeah. Is that a problem of the discipline? No, it's how the discipline is getting practiced. But is it the problem of the practitioners? Not entirely. It is a problem of the way in which the world is structured. The West ruled for a very long time, so they had a head start and all the rest of it, right? Being aware of, so it's important to unpack the problem of Eurocentrism. Who's responsible for it? What form is it taking? And what is it that we can do about it? And I have only chipped away at a very small part of it, which is the one thing that we can do about it is to ask ourselves, are we the first ones to confront the problem of Eurocentrism? And are we the first ones? When did we start doing it? At least this evidence. 105 years ago. You can go back further, there'll be more examples. But this is a conscious IR example. Okay? So Eurocentrism is a reality. Now, the third part, and again, this is not something, so this leads a lot of, this position that I'm now going to articulate, leads a lot of my colleagues to sort of tell me that I'm basically a slave of the West. My position on that always is, it does not matter what, where the theory has come from. To me, what matters is, does it help me understand the question that I think is important? You know, the scholar of physics को ये सवाल उठता ही नहीं है. वो कभी ये नहीं बोलते हैं कि भाई शंकराचार्य से पूछने जाएं physics. Sorry, you know, they never have this thing. They don't say, oh, Newton was Western, so I will not study Newton. Never. This question does not occur to them. Why is it that it is a question for us? Why should I study Kenneth Waltz? My question is, if you are interested in power politics, if you are interested in balance of power, can you avoid Kenneth Waltz and still study and still study balance of power? No, you can't. If you're interested in human rights, should you still study Kenneth Waltz? No. Horses for courses, right? If it works, if it is useful for you, to me, if it is useful to me, it does not matter where it's coming from. That's number one. Number two, that was personal. The other thing is, in my assessment, what are the leading problems of the day? If the leading problems of the day are not addressed by the theories that I am studying, then I need to look for new theories that address what I think are the leading problems of the day, which is very different from leading problem for me. Right? So if you disaggregate that question, this is how, so this is how I sort of think about it. Okay, no, someone else, yeah. It's fine, you can just speak. Excellent question. Your name again?
Okay, so two part. One is um, there is nothing invalid about an anarchy-oriented understanding of international relations. First point. You can, a great deal of very important uh, um, developments in international affairs can be understood by positing anarchy. The problem is that if you think about the international domain as marked by anarchy, then the questions that you are bound to be interested in are questions around security, power politics. Everything else becomes secondary. Sure, right? Because in the absence of government, might makes right, dog eat dog world, bound to happen. So you see, but that is not all that is happening in international relations, is it? So much going on. But the anarchy-oriented understanding of international relations creates a hierarchy. On top of it, security, power politics, more important things, other things less important. Not how I want to think about it. And I'll tell you why. You said this very clearly, because international relations are a result of nations interacting with each other. Hmm? There is a certain sequentiality there, and sequentiality is the assumption is nations came first, and then they started interacting. Can I reverse it for you? The international was there from the very beginning. Nations are a product of international interactions. Nations are produced by international relations. Nations don't produce international relations. Because it is this problem. Because you say nations are producing international relations, and nations have government, order, so international relations must also have this order. This is called the intellectual bias imposed by the sovereign state on the international domain. It doesn't have to be like this. Because if we just take hold of the fact that it has always been like this, the international domain has always been there. People have come, gone. I, I don't know, I don't want to get into it. But that was, so that's one part of the response. The second part is, what was the second point? Point about, yeah, so what is the problem? So two parts. What is the problem if you study a very fine work of Western IR scholarship? I want to understand, like, which part of it is problematic? So, what is the problem? But what is the problem? So contribute to each one of these theories. So you can contribute to each one of these theories. Absolutely. Sorry? So that is, so exactly, so that is your as in our problem. That is not the problem of the discipline. So we need to work on our academic and knowledge. It's a very complex thing, but my feeling is it's something that we need to address at our level as opposed to blaming IR. I'm just saying. So the answer, so one model that I have given is precisely this, right? Just these two things. Have our fundamentals clear, and see what work has already been done, and then build upon the work that has already been done. There's an advantage there, and the advantage is if somebody say, produces a fine piece of scholarship, no, and they've asked roughly the same question that you have asked, then they have thought about some things, and they have got some things right and some things wrong. There is enough that is already there which you don't have to repeat your labor on. Work has already been done, and avoiding repetition is an important task, right? Finite resources. That's why we should read what has already been done, and clues will come from there. Just to give you an example, if you want to ask yourself this very simple question, okay, I want to create another theory, read Jayantanuja Bandyopadhyay, no, please, and see where the problem lies. Is the theory not working? Or is it because he was a non-Western scholar away from Delhi that he did not get the same recognition? It could just be a sociological rather than an intellectual problem. Right? So the work is already there. It's good to sort of see what work is there and build upon it, rather than sort of say, hang on, I'm the first person to whom. I'm not saying that you're the one, right? Yeah, obviously not. But the spirit of the age is कि हमारे पास ही ये problems आएंगे. It's not true. Yeah. Yes.
So you said that the word small sovereign states. So one video has mentioned understanding as sort of limited what constitutes a nation state. So in order to recognize uh, the 1707 to post Aurangzeb era populated by sovereign states, we have to break away from this mold and this definition. How can we do it? Has it been done? Would it be recognized in the current higher dispute as possible?
So, not a scholar of international law. I am not. So, in one way, I will not be able to answer that question.
So that is how we constitute the understanding of states. So can we
What?
like,
The legal understanding of states.
and that is how we also define states in IR also?
No. IR, so IR, there's a legal understanding of states, right? Which is a state is sovereign in the Westphalian sense, which is to say that they declare that they are sovereign and there is recognition of that sovereignty by others, right? In that sense, in terms of international law, the value and worth of each state is the same as the value and worth of all the other states down to an individual. Yeah? That's the international law position. Legally, they're all equal because they're all sovereign. In terms of international politics, obviously this is not the case because formal juridical equality coexists with substantive hierarchy, inequality. Some are more powerful and some are less. To me, international relations occur at the intersection of formal equality and substantive inequality. States are formally equal, substantively unequal. And it is this interaction that to me produces international affairs. So a purely legal definition of the sovereign state is not tenable for me. But again, I'm not a scholar of international law, so I will not be able to comment on the small states dimension of the question. Hmm? Okay. Yes. Can you give him the mic, please? It's okay. So, substantive question. I'll leave that to you. You should figure it out for yourself. I have an answer, but I will not. Such a substantive question. I'd take method-related questions. Substantive questions we can talk separately. I think that there are patterns emerging, but we don't want to talk about it here.
Hello. आ रही है आवाज?
Yes, I saw him first. Yes. Again, your name, Mohammed Saif. Yes. The first is epistemic resistance. What is the second one? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Sir, my question is that majorly when we start, for in IR, so basically all theories, major theories like liberalism, realism, or constructivism, all these theories basically coming from the Western world. So, what do you think that how these scholars have contributed in terms of epistemic resistance for the global south? How these scholars counter these things. Second thing is that institutional domination is there, sir. Like we already know about the SAP program and all these things, that how these theories are already suiting these interests of the Western world. So how these scholarship are able to counter these things?
What you're calling epistemic resistance is obviously there, and you've got example of it, evidence of it, right? But I don't think that they are. I don't think that these theories are really the best way in which they are offering that, mounting that epistemic resistance, is by doing their job well, asking good questions and answering them. Very to talk about it bilaterally. It's a very, very long. Thank you.
We'll share the email of Atul and you can this to him because and now I think it has been an interesting session with Atul. We would like to honor him with a so this is in the morning for doing nothing, but he has actually earned this. Great. So, on behalf of the Department of Political Science and the GAN team, we'd like to thank you for sparing your time, coming over here and sharing your views with our students. The next session would be done by Dr. Rahat Hassan, so it will immediately start. So just bear with us. Rahat, you will start just now.
सर इधर आ जाए नहीं नहीं वो सर इधर जाए